There's been more of scientific discovery, more of technical advancement and material progress in your lifetime and mine than in all the ages of...
What if finding the right job wasn't a frustrating maze of applications and rejections, but a single conversation with an AI agent that truly understands your potential? While many fear automation, what if AI actually transformed recruiting into something more human rather than less? I'm Matt Alder, and welcome to episode 696 of Recruiting Future. My guest this week is Diana Tsai, co-founder and CEO of Upwage, a company building AI interviewing agents that have been proven to reduce turnover by as much as 48%. Diana shares valuable insights from working with employers to deploy over 4,000 AI agents. We also discuss her recently published book, AI for Good, which maps out a positive vision for the future of recruiting where AI doesn't replace human connection, but creates space for it to flourish. Hi, Diana, and welcome to the podcast.
I'm so excited to be here, Matt.
It's a pleasure to be talking to you. Could you just introduce yourself and tell everyone what you do?
Co-founder, CEO at Upwage. We build AI agents that decrease turnover, increase performance, and help extend recruiting teams. So very, very fun stuff.
Fantastic. Now, you've just put together a really interesting book about the future of recruiting and AI and all those kind of things, which is just about to come out. You very kindly sent me a copy of it, which I've read, and it's a really interesting vision of the future. Tell us a little bit about the book and why you decided to produce it.
Yeah. So my co-founder, Greg, and Yvonne Johnson, our head of AI, and I essentially decided, we wanted to write this book. And the book title is AI for Good, How AI Can Transform Hiring for Good. It's all about agentic AI. The other title we had for it was Agents of Change, because that's really what it's about. We wrote the book because last year we deployed about 4,017 different AI agents and had really quite a lot of conversations with TA leaders about what the future of work would look like. And what we noticed is a lot of actually uncertainty and fear about the future. And our thought is always, if we have a very optimistic future, mostly because I think out of necessity, you either have to choose to have an optimistic view, or you can sort of just descend into the depths of despair around the entire technology revolution and just be like, well, hands up, that's it.
Sounds about right, yeah.
And I think my co-founder and team and I, we're not going to sort of roll over and just be like, well, this is the world that we're entering. All AI robots are taking over all our jobs. Our thought was, is there a way that we can leverage this technology for good? Is there a way that we can take the power of AI and essentially combat the disruptive impact of AI as well in one fell swoop? And so that was the premise of the book. The premise of the book was really, let's paint a vision and a roadmap to 2035 of what the world can look like with AI leveraged in the best possible way. Now, of course, I can't guarantee that future because it relies on all of us working together on this front. But we do want to, there's no possibility of building a better future if we don't even have the way to articulate what that might look like. So that was why we decided to write this book.
And I couldn't agree with that. I couldn't agree with your thinking more there, because I think it's just so important to do that, because these tools and these technologies have such tremendous potential. I really think that they can take us to this sort of recruiting nirvana where, recruiting works. As you say, it combats the threat of AI to jobs. And really, everyone can get the job they need at the right time and all those sort of things. And I think, without a vision, as you say, we're never gonna get there. So it was really kind of refreshing to read that. Now, let's dive into that vision a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
In the book, you talk about sort of 3 waves of AI transformation in recruiting. 2 questions really. What's it? Talk about each wave and what it entails. And why did you pick the timescales that you did for this transformation?
Yeah. So the 3 waves, where the 3 waves came from. So Greg Call, my co-founder, and I, we always sit down and we do some future thinking at the end of the year. So December last year, we sat down and said, and the question we ask each other is, how far into the future can you see and with what conviction level? And based on that, all of our company strategy emerges from this. And so we spent 2 full days discussing this, trying to figure out okay, what do we see? What are we aligned on? What basis is on all the inputs that we've had, building these thousands of AI agents, talking to all the TA leaders, deploying them in real hiring environments. And we're like, okay, we see 3 waves emerging. The first wave, where most of us are familiar with now, it's already happening. We had put 2026, 2027 is essentially when we rise to really see like this wave go mainstream. But we call that wave the transformation of recruiting tasks. And so by 2026, we're already seeing this already, but the world of AI-driven interviews, AI top of funnel, is really going to proliferate. And the reason for that, it's simple. It's just economics. Behind the scenes, we know the ROI on these tools, and it's too good to not adopt. Just in any system that is capitalistic, like it's impossible not to do it. But additionally, the transformation of recruiting tasks means the transformation of the role of a recruiter. These are some of the meatiest conversations we're having. I think it's critically important for us to have a vision for what the role of the recruiter is in this new world. And it's actually a really freaking exciting role. And so we have the transformation of the role of the recruiter. We also have the emergence of different types of businesses. So the companies that adopt AI, right? We see this with companies that we're working with that are using our AI agents. It's like faster hiring, better hires, lower turnover. So massive long-term business growth. There's going to be a distinct difference between those businesses that do adopt AI into their processes, including recruiting, versus those that don't. It's just the pace of growth. You can't compete against a company. Like when a company adopts AI agents across its different business units, that's like you literally just taking your workforce and turn it into 10x your current workforce. And now you're competing against companies that are still at 1x workforce, which is like, okay, you can see where the math works out. So that's really wave 1, right? Wave 2 emerged. Our vision for wave 2 emerged out of real customer conversations. And actually, we have an amazing advisory board of talent leaders. And what we talked about there is, so when you deploy hundreds of AI agents across your organization let's start with basic tasks, interviewing, assessments, right? Onboarding is another more basic. So as these AI agents are deployed in partnership with TA leaders and TA teams, you rapidly will see the emergence and the need for a new kind of AI manager that can manage these teams of agents. So a coordinator. And the best example I can give of this is one of our partners has 962 AI agents deployed across their different roles. And so the question now becomes, how do those agents pass information to each other? So if a candidate's going through one interview for a job, and actually they're really qualified for 3 other interviews that our agents are interviewing for, how can we effectively know in the middle of that conversation, redirect them, reroute them? And then the other part is we're already starting to build agents downstream. So not just in the top of funnel, but retention check AIs that actually engage with your employees after that. So what then happens is, how do you feed that data back into the interviewing agents at top funnel to make sure that those learnings of who is actually a great fit, great performer in that job end up trickling up to the top? So to be able to do that, you need an AI manager. And so that's sort of your multi-agent system type construct, where you have this AI manager that's reporting to the TA leader and HR leaders to unlock deeper insights and strategic decision making. So we think that's 2028, 2029. It could be earlier with how fast things are moving. We're already doing a lot of R&D into how to build that AI manager, but the coordination piece is still rather complex, like the coordination of agents.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. In the final wave 3, we put 2030 plus, but really we want it to happen tomorrow. This is the whole reason we even wanted to build this company, is the transformation of the labor market, how AI transforms the labor market. So today, if you think about today, right, we're powering thousands of AI agents. They're powering interviewing assessments for a variety of jobs across hourly all the way up to executive level roles. But on top of these job interviewing agents, you can actually build a universal interviewer that can replace the traditional application. And why that's so exciting is today, the kinds of wins that we're delivering to TA teams are all around time to fill, time to hire, and then you've got quality of hire, you have turnover metrics, your performance metrics. But that translates into a far superior candidate experience, because what it means when we decrease time to fill is a candidate gets a job faster. That's awesome. So on the other side of this universal interviewer concept, you can almost imagine a GPT-like interface where a candidate can just go to a single interface and just start talking about like, hey, I just got laid off, X company just laid off 10,000 people. All these folks can just come to the universal AI interviewer, say, this is my background. I'm going to drop in my LinkedIn profile. Here's my resume. This is actually what I'm passionate about, because to be honest, I didn't really love my job anyway. I'd rather do this, but I do have these skills. Can you tell me what's out there? And the AI interviewer can connect to millions of interviewing agents that are live in the market. So that's our goal, is to build as many job agents as possible so that we can essentially layer them foundationally underneath the universal interviewer. And the universal interviewer can help job seekers get to the right job much faster and consolidate, 45, 50 interviews for a single type of role into one interview, find opportunities for better roles in the middle of the conversation, all that great stuff. And the intent there is to create a world where layoffs no longer derail careers. Right today, there's just, especially in the United States, there's no system of protection. There is no safety net for layoffs. There's really nothing there. It's just good luck, go apply to a bunch of jobs. So, and this is going to become even bigger of a problem with AI and automation. We just are already seeing the job market evolving. So the question is, how do you leverage the power of AI, build this safety net of AI agents to essentially mitigate what is coming? But yeah.
And it's a fantastic vision, because that whole, even just that whole job discovery piece, we've not moved on since you looked for jobs in newspapers, job boards and all of that kind of stuff, and the search engines that we've had. They still make it very difficult for people to find jobs that are suitable for them, to find jobs that are still open. And I think that the potential of AI to fix that is just sort of fantastic. And it's interesting about timescales as well, because from an AI perspective, 10 years seems like an absolute age. But having said that, I've done quite a lot of work examining how people have talked about the future in the last 10 years of this podcast. And change takes a very long time in this industry. So it's that kind of balance between the two is obviously quite difficult to predict. Whichever way that we look at it, though, the role of recruiters is evolving. What kind of skills and competencies do you think that TA leaders should be focusing on in their teams right now? So, the transformation has started. It's probably debate about which stage we're kind of at and all that sort of stuff and how long it's going to take. But, fundamentally, the role of a recruiter is already changing. So what should people kind of focus on in terms of making sure they have the right skills for the near future?
I love that question. And so I think rather than answering from my point of view, I'll just share what I've learned from some of the chief people officers, the TA leaders we're working with, and how they're retraining their teams, they're empowering their teams. Because I think that's just going to be more valuable. Their perspective, for sure. We get to learn a lot from amazing TA leaders, how they're applying technology. I would say typically it starts with the philosophy. So it starts with a point of view on how we're raising our game collectively. So what I've seen from exceptional TA leaders is that they're recognizing that there's a fierce new reality that we're competing in, which is just that you have accelerating tech stacks, agent stacks that are being built across all different, and this isn't even unique to TA leaders, it's also every single business unit. So leaders as a whole of business units are realizing we're the new market we're entering, all of our competitors are in a AI adoption war. And so essentially, how do we actually equip our teams with the right technology to outperform or to continue to perform at the same levels that we are today? In the recruiting space specifically, what this means is also candidate expectations are increasing significantly. So high touch, rapid engagement, personalized interviews, no more chatbots, no more application forms is a baseline. It's no longer a nice to have. It's like, whoa. Our expectations, the expectations that we are held to as TA have significantly increased since AI. The other part of it is the opportunity that is opening up for recruiting teams, right? So TA leaders realize that, okay, my recruiter team is now is truly priceless. Like the time is really, really important. So how do I free my recruiters from all of these manual screening tasks, the endless phone tags, scheduling as admin? Like, how do I get them to what they're actually meant to be doing? And so this is the foundations. That's the beginning of the change, is when a leader starts thinking, okay, how do we raise our game? So the second part of this is AI-empowered recruiters. So I think it's like distinctly understanding that there's a difference between recruiters and AI-empowered recruiters. And this is at the point where a TA leader will say, hey, I want to empower my recruiters with the best technology possible so that they can function as 5x, 10x versions of themselves. So as the company grows, we can extend our reach, our ability. I think the number that even we're talking about internally outside of the recruiting space is revenue per headcount. Like it really comes down to how do we increase revenue per headcount? Because when technology accelerates, it's like, okay, everyone becomes more productive. And so in this world, what we're seeing is TA leaders that are recognizing that the old way of doing things for recruiters is, scheduling time suck, backlog of candidates, no call, no shows, lots of drop-offs. And there's almost zero time for relationship building with top candidates, highly transactional conversations, 20 phone screens, 15 minutes, let's go, right? There's no I really want to dig into this part of the conversation, really want to get to know you. And a lot of that manifests in the bottom of the funnel in terms of poor fit candidates or low performance or not a culture fit or turnover. All the time we're hearing from candidates like, this was not the job that I thought I was signing up for. I don't want to be here. And those are easy to mitigate. It's if you have enough time to spend with a candidate, this is mitigable. So that's one side in terms of how we're seeing TA leaders evolve the role of a recruiter to say, hey, okay, when we have AI empowered recruiters, we're gonna have our recruiters focus a lot more on deepening their relationships with candidates, especially top candidates. Because you're not just vetting that candidate's vetting you. And so what is the process for how do you invest in that time and make it less transactional? Super important. The other side we're seeing TA leaders lean into is actually training their recruiters to spend more time with hiring managers. So rather than saying, we only have time for an intake form, now we got to go back to our phone screens. It's like, let's sit in on the business. Let's get to know those teams deeper. Let's build much deeper relationships with the hiring managers, more deeply. It's just, this is what it opens up, right? This is what AI opens up, is the opportunity for recruiters to lean into the small sliver of time that was previously allocated for real relationship building and expand that dramatically, which has massive ramifications for the business from a quality perspective. So in this new world, then the AI empowered recruiter, right, has 24/7 AI interviewers that are automatically taking care of their interviews overnight. They're screening, and they can jump into those screening and interviewing results in the morning when they come to work, dig into those conversations, find the great candidates, still get them on a phone call, but actually the phone call sounds totally different now, totally different conversation happening. More bandwidth for those deep conversations, more bandwidth to bring those candidates back to hiring managers, go back and forth really to and understand, calibrate. It's like you get to be more human. And so I think of it as shifting from defense to offense mode. That's what we've noticed the most in the teams that we're working with, is they're not running around hair on fire anymore. It's more okay, we can be on offense. We now have the tools to be on offense. And I think the best leaders I've seen in the space are really thinking about this technology as investing in their recruiting team. So each recruiter gets a team of AI agents to support them on first round interviewing and assessment for any role. This is super critical. And to also really, really train recruiters to understand you are the decision maker. You're still doing what you're doing, just at a higher quality and a higher bar. What's really critical is you now have a team supporting you. That's what it comes down to. So I think that's universal. Even outside of recruiting, it's each individual employee team member now has an AI agent team that can support them. And that's amazing from a productivity perspective. And also just from where we can focus our human talents on perspective.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll come back to that in a second with some kind of sort of follow-ups around that sort of human machine split. Before I do though, just going back to the kind of the overall sort of vision, you mentioned AI talent managers kind of helping people with their career and all this kind of stuff. Now, difficult question to answer because we're talking about the future and there are unknowns and all that sort of stuff. But one of the issues with recruiting at the moment is around almost a lack of data. So resumes don't have very much on them. LinkedIn profiles really don't either. You've got job descriptions, you've got disparate HR systems and all that sort of stuff. In order to sort of support these kind of super AI agents of the future, where's the data coming from? What kind of needs to shift to sort of build the foundation for that to happen?
I love this question. So this is funny that you asked this because we haven't even talked about this, but we are we're building out an AI builder agent that releases at the end of the month. And what it does is it collects all of the context to build AI interviewers. And so it's based off of all of our learnings from building the last 4,017 AI agents. But essentially what we realized is it all comes down to resumes, LinkedIn profiles, incomplete data produces bad data in, bad data out. So it's it's not surprising then. So right now we're matching at the top of the funnel with relatively bad data, a resume, and then relatively more bad data, which is just an application. So it's just together, this is sort of the blind leading the blind. So the world that we're entering now, with our AI builder agent, what we're actually doing is enabling recruiters and TA leaders to be able to build their own AI agents by inputting a couple key data sets. Base minimum job description, a well-written job description. We take that, inhale it, convert it over into competencies, skills, the definition of those competencies and skills for a business, and then the questions, the interview questions, the behavioral interview questions and assessment questions that match up to those competencies. So the first data point, the base minimum, is job description. This is literally if you have nothing else. But what we find is if you want to really create an incredibly robust AI interviewer, we also include typically company mission, company values, sometimes because you want culture fit questions that are actually screening for company values. Previous interview guides, we can learn from that. Tone of voice examples are super important as well. And then also what I love is I think about one of the most ingenious applications. Like I think about one of the best AI interviewers that one of our TA partners created. It decreased turnover in a patient service representative role by 48%. And it was because he took performance reviews at the bottom of. So he actually literally took these performance reviews and said, I want my AI interviewer to understand what we're looking for in an employee, a high performing employee. And I was like, this is freaking brilliant, like perfect, right? So that's how you leverage this base data set of inputs that are far more robust than anything else to then create your AI interviewers. And so then the AI interviewers can understand, okay, I have a job description, I've got the interview guides, I have performance, okay, I have the hiring intake form. I'm going to aggregate all this and now recommend a set of competencies to the recruiter or to the TA leader. And for this particular role, and it's highly customized. So that's how we generate then competencies, usually 3 to 5 or skills related to that particular role. And then underneath that, you nestle the questions. So then you can generate interview questions that approach those particular skills and competencies. And when you do it this way, you're essentially engineering the interviewing process from the bottom up. You're really, really going deep in funnel. And so what's super interesting about that is everything that I just described with our AI builder agent, you can do in less than 5 minutes. And the moment all those inputs go in, the agent's created. So it's instantaneous agent creation. So we're super stoked about it because it's just going to enable a lot of really quick ability to capture a lot of the things that have been almost impossible to capture before.
In the book, you also talk about AI's potential to reduce bias in hiring. And it's something that I fundamentally kind of agree with. I think that there's a huge opportunity for AI to do that and sort of fix recruiting from that perspective. On the flip side, there's also the opportunity or the fact that it might do completely the opposite if not handled properly, or there are scenarios where it kind of increases bias in hiring potentially. What can employers do right now as they're sort of learning about AI, deploying AI, purchasing AI, building AI, whatever it is, to make sure that, we're going down that path of reducing bias rather than amplifying existing bias?
I love that question. So first, I think start with the regulations. So New York State Law 144, we also have a list of all our regulations on our trust center as just a resource for TA leaders. But I think it starts with the mentality of let's not just meet current AI compliance regulations on a federal or state level or even on an international level. Let's challenge ourselves to exceed those standards. What we found when digging into most of these laws is they're they're basic. I would actually love more regulation. I think we find we're all the time like self-policing ourselves above and beyond current regulations because we're looking through them. We're like, well, this is interesting. We're required to do a third-party bias audit, but it's only on protected classes. What about non-protected classes? What if our AI is biased? So that's why we run another secondary bias audit that's not required by law to focus on non-protected classes and adverse impact, because it's like there's things that the law doesn't require that I think we know we should be doing. And especially TA leaders will know like, that's interesting. Like complying, to be honest, like compliance, if you just go through it all, it's pretty onerous, but it's not impossible. The harder bar to set is how you imagine how to exceed it. So essentially, let's go beyond. I can give another example. So I think like regulation is one side of it. How do you exceed current regulations? You can set that as like baseline benchmark and go beyond. The second is actually in the product design process, which translates from a TA leader perspective into really being attuned to what's going on inside the products that you're considering using. So specifically, like here's a good example. So our AI agents, we have an interviewing agent and an analyst agent that does all the assessments. And so they're actually completely separate agents. And we did this intentionally because we actually end up redacting all of the PII from the interview before it goes through the assessment agent. So it's stuff like that where you want to like just dig deeper into the product. So if you see a product and you're like, okay, it's interesting. They're doing interviewing and are they doing any redaction between? Like how do we make sure that we sort of de-bias in advance that analyst role, right? So that's another side. The other thing I would look at is also really thinking about like, so one of the metrics that we track is the percentage of candidates that are completing their interviews after hours. So non-traditional candidates that may actually just simply opt. So this is like little they're actually giant pots of bias, to be totally honest, but they're just overlooked because it's like, oh, well, we offer interviews when our recruiters are online 9 to 5. That just means that everybody who can't do 9 to 5, and you can sort of think through, okay, what are the scenarios of folks who are less likely to be able to do 9 to 5? Maybe they have another job, they have children, they have other gigs that they're doing, whatever it happens to be. It's like those folks are now excluded from the process. Do we include that right now as a set of like, oh, that's no, but do we see that has adverse impact? Probably yes. And then the other thing I've looked into is form matters. So the reason why we ended up like really leaning into chat is actually we did a lot of studies on video, and essentially like video is very efficient in a lot of ways because you get to see personality, all these elements. And we really also are looking into how we bring video into the process. But what we're very cognizant of also is video oftentimes encourages certain candidates to participate and others to not. And in several, not just studies, but also in conversations with TA leaders that are trying to either implement or remove video-based technologies, there's a lot of like, oh my gosh, we noticed that women were opting out at a significantly higher rate. They just opt themselves out. Our diversity pipeline is decreasing. So it's stuff like this where there's a lot of nuances in form and how the product is designed that will inherently bake in or remove bias from your process. And the dial moved is much larger than simply like your bias audits, or because that's after the fact. You have the results tracking after the fact, and you can improve it in base implements like, oh, we went from point A to point 9, whatever that is. But really, it's a design question. Like at the fundamental level, how did you design the system? Is there thought put into how the form includes more candidates, how the form is more inclusive of different types? So there's that. I think that's the key thing here. But yeah,
You kind of gave your sort of vision for the future role of recruiters and all that kind of thing. The kind of the debate about the balance between AI and humans in recruitment is obviously a very emotional discussion at the moment, because radically affects people's jobs and all that sort of stuff. And there are some very kind of polar opinions on it and what's going to happen. Where do you think that balance is going to end up? So, kind of realistically, what are the things that AI is never going to be able to do? Because, or certainly that we can't foresee that. We can't foresee that at the moment, because I think a lot of the debate gets into the nitty gritty about what's possible now and people's experience and all that kind of stuff. But looking at it a different way, fundamentally, what are the things that you don't think AI will be able to do that humans do really well?
it's the relationships. It literally is. It comes down to the fact that, I see the biggest gap, honestly, in let's just call the human capital space, the people management space, the talent space. So when AI can do some of these initial automatable tasks, right? What it opens up is the opportunity to lean into areas that we don't even have time to touch right now and have never had. So things like, how do you provide white glove service to all of your internal applicants who have worked at your company for 5 years, have no idea a job exists that is open? In the meanwhile, you're spending a ton on job ads trying to source a whole bunch of folks externally. And then if someone internal does find it, they're thrown into a pile where they apply in the same process as an external candidate. They're like, wait, I've been here 5 years. I already know this. And so what does that look like if you can literally have recruiters spending time saying, okay, my external pipeline is taken care of. Mostly, I'm going to jump in and look at the highest fit candidates. They've been sorted for me. I'm going to go through those. But on the other hand, what's opened up for me is I can go into my internal talent pools, and I can actually not only, use algorithms to find the best candidate, but actually reach out, grab a coffee, be like, hey, I know you've been here for 5 years. Did you know that these opportunities exist? Or I saw you applied for this job. I want to dig in with you because you're actually not let's talk about skills fit. You're actually a better fit for this other job within that I have open over here. Would you be open to relocation? How's your family doing? Are you interested in this? None of this is like crazy to me. None of this is the stuff that's super exciting. Like I get chills thinking about like, okay, what happens when you actually have time to spend with people inside the business? And then I think on the other side, it's really around, the best metaphor I have for this right now is in the AI engineering world right now, right, there's this tool that's sort of exploding and it's called Lovable. And so with Lovable, you can create your own websites with a prompt. And so people are freaking out about it. So I was playing with it the other day, and what's so interesting about this tool is that you can get to your 80% MVP very fast. And so at the 80%, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. I'm using this tool and I'm not an engineer and I'm building this amazing product. But you hit 80% and you're like, this is super annoying. Now I can't get it the last 20% to being actually workable. This is actually, I believe, happening across all industries. And I bring it up because the moment this happened, we obviously work with a lot of our engineering team. The engineer's role, because of AI tools and AI engineering tools like Lovable, has now shifted to the last 20%. It's a very important role. But what that means is if you can open up the first 80%, instead of having to spend 100% of your time to build one MVP or one prototype, you could build 5 prototypes for 5 different companies simultaneously in that time, right? But only focusing on the last 20%. And also your clients could be coming to you saying like, here's my 80% prototype. Could you help me get it to the last mile? I don't have to spend time going back and forth trying to figure out all the minutia in the beginning. Super fascinating. Like, and that's what I'm seeing also. It's what we're seeing in the recruiting world too. It's like that last 20%, you think it's 20%, but let's think about it. Like that last 20%, you can expand it so much into areas of detail we've never had time to go into. And that's what I mean. It's like the whole role of a recruiter can shift because now if you take off the first 80%, there's this remaining 20% that you can expand into and reimagine what that looks like. Like, what does it look like if instead of a hiring manager intake form in a 30-minute process, I can sit down with this team and I can actually understand not just the role, but the nuances of this specific team and what this team needs and the dynamics in the room. Because it's not always the same person. That's the thing. Like you're not always, even if it's a single role, the same role. I'm hiring for a designer. It's not the same designer you're hiring for the same team. It's team specific too and culture specific. It's not even company specific. Sometimes it's team specific. And we do not have time for those conversations right now. Like I rarely come across recruiting teams that are in that deep in the business to be able to have that level of nuance. But yeah.
Final question for you. So obviously there's a huge amount going on. Different companies are at different stages with all of this. It's very the landscape can look quite confusing when you sort of look at it. What are going back to your sort of 10-year vision, what are the sort of significant signals or sort of waypoints that we've reached a certain stage or the next stage is coming as we go through? So it's really kind of like, how do people know that transformation is happening and things are moving forward?
So interesting. I think the one is the one most obvious metric or the most obvious signal is the adoption of AI agents. So you can almost do a count, right? It's like how many AI agents is our team using? How many AI agents are proliferating across our enterprise? That's step one is like the initial. So I think of those as Bs. AI agents can be as simple or sophisticated as you want them to be. Essentially, it's like they can be almost a basic level. They're doing a simple job to a very complex advanced behavioral interview, like whatever it happens to be. So, but they're like bees in a beehive. And so once you have enough bees, then you can essentially build a queen bee. And that's what the talent manager is. And so you actually need foundationally like enough AI agents to have network effects to then build a management level agent. So that's where you'll see the emergence of the queen bee talent manager type AIs will essentially, the prerequisite is enough bees, enough agents that have been adopted. It's going to be the same thing with unlocking the universal interviewer, because otherwise the only data the universal interviewer has to build on is job applications. And we're back at square zero where the AI interviewers referring people to apply for jobs and nobody gets responses. So you actually foundationally have to have the interviewers in place. And that's why like everything is really about this sort of race right now to building the interviewers. And the interesting thing is that when you actually have the bees, let's call these like the interviewing agent bees in place, it's not only, you can not only build a universal interviewer for a job market, you can also do it for individual companies. So if a company has like 5,000 open recs, the same applies. Imagine a world where you're not going to a career site trying to like figure out what the heck you're applying to. And it's just like you're talking to a universal interviewer that's designed for X company, and you can actually get to know all the roles. And it's not a chatbot that like gets you to a dead end. So this is the key thing I think that is really interesting. And so if you think about network effects, that's how you can sort of benchmark what wave is coming. And I think it could happen a lot faster than we think as well. A lot faster. But yeah.
Diana, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you. This was great.
This is my show.